What's up, guys? Welcome back to another Java tutorial. In today's video we will be talking about variables. By the end of the video we should have covered the basic definition of variables. We should know why we even need variables in our programs, and also we should talk about the concept of data types and variable declaration, and then finally variable initialization and assignment. So let's get started. So, welcome back. First things first, what is a variable? A variable is a container in computer memory where you store your program's data. What does this mean? Inside your computer, you should be concerned about two things right now: the CPU and the RAM. The CPU is the brain of your computer. Every calculation that happens inside the computer is done by the CPU. So when you write your program, it will be run by the CPU. Now, here's the thing. Even though the CPU runs the code, it doesn't store the data it's working with. Instead, this other thing called the RAM or memory stores all the data the CPU is working with. So when you give data to your program, it has to be stored in the memory first before the CPU can take it and use it. Now, why am I talking about CPU and RAM? Here's the reason. When you create a variable inside your program, it reserves a location in the computer memory so that some value can be stored there. For example, you can say something like, hey computer, find some free space in your memory and call that place age. Now later on in the same program, you can also say something like, hey computer, you see that place in memory called age, put the value 21 there. Now I know code isn't written like this, but you get the point. This picture in the slide demonstrates what I've just said. Both the code and data are stored in the RAM as the computer executes the program. It is not a thing that the code or data is stored inside the CPU itself. At this point, I find it important to explain the difference between variables and actual data values, because that will help us understand the main essence of variables. Let's do this with an example. Say we are writing a program about a person. Here are some of the data we might be working with: the person's name, age, gender, etc. In this illustration, I have two series of boxes. The first one representing variables inside code, and the second one representing actual data values inside computer memory or RAM. Now, inside the memory, the actual values we might store are Nick, 21, and male, because ultimately that's what the computer uses when running the code. But also, we want to be able to refer to those memory locations inside our code so that we can even put some data values there in the first place, or maybe set them to new values later. So here is the takeaway from the slide. The variables are the names we use in the code to mark locations in the memory, and the values are the actual data that's stored in the memory. So in this case, we use variable names such as name, age, gender as references to memory locations where data values such as Nick, 21, and male are stored respectively. Now, why do we need variables? First off, to give meaning to data. I know it is obvious by now that variables help us understand data. Let's reconsider when we used the variable age in our code to mark the memory space where the value 21 was stored. That meant that we understood that 21 is someone's age. Now let's assume that we are able to read code written by someone else. In that code, if the programmer simply puts 21 where he wanted to show someone's age, unless he tells us or includes a comment to describe the code, we won't be able to discern that that's someone's age, of course. Also, variables let us refer back to data and change or use it. Another good thing about using variables is that once we create them, we're able to refer back to the same data and maybe change it whenever required. Now, there are other reasons to use variables, but for now, these are the main ones you need to know in order to understand variables.